This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gold.
Welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about the most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. It is I, Old Ginger Face. Not that you're aware, but this is the second time around. I'm starting to have real questions about the hardware I've purchased for the show. Spent a lot of money on. It keeps failing me, but here I am, guys. I'll stop my bitching. Thank you for being here. Thank you for finding the podcast. Thank you for all the binge listening. I apologize for my voice. I am in the midst of some kind of cold, trying to get over it. I was at work all week doing doubles, and my family was home sick as hell, and I was like, I'm escaping this. Sometimes that happens for me, but not this time. My last shift at work, pounding headache, throat was on fire. So I'm on day 3, but I'm dedicated to you. I'm dedicated to the audience. I didn't want to skip an interview, and I was excited to have this guy on. So without further ado, let me bring him on the show. He's got over a decade in law enforcement as an Arizona state trooper. He did 4 years active duty for the Air Force. He's the host of the Blue to Green podcast. Without further ado, bring on the great AJ Jacobs. AJ.
Hello, sir.
Hello, sir. Good to see you once again.
We're back now again.
We're back again. I'm excited to have you, brother. And I'm always looking for guests, and there's a lot of coppers kind of getting into the space now and being on social media and helping people and sharing their experiences. So it actually really benefits me. But you came up on my radar. I don't know if it was the algorithm, or I think maybe we're in a chat together with a bunch of other coppers. I can't remember.
Oh, okay. Duh.
Yeah. And I was like, let me grab this guy on. And I thought when I saw your show, it said Blue to Green. I thought it was like, oh, the guy was a cop. And then he went in the army, or, he did something like that. I didn't think it was security because, they have green lights. I'm like, I don't know what it is. And then I saw it was pot, like you're a marijuana advocate.
Yes.
And which is interesting to me and made me want to talk to you even more, because I'm not really educated on the science of how pot helps people. I think we've all been hearing for probably the last 25 years, like, it's my cataracts from my back. Like obviously it has some qualities that help people. And also I actually went to high school with a kid who was a journalist in the Pacific Northwest, and he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And he did this protocol. I forget the guy's name, but you actually eat it's like a syrup it's almost like hash.
RSO.
RSO. That's what it is.
Rick Simpson oil. Yes.
Yes. So he's on the Rick Simpson list for remission of stage 4. Like he said they went into his pancreas and all the tumors were like little grains of sand that they could just wipe out. So
there's something to it.
Incredible. And it's something to do with the endocrine system and all this. But he said he still has moments where like he has scares still, but he's been able to keep this at bay for years now, that was the first time I saw it. And I was like, whoa, that's insane. Like we should definitely be studying this more. Now, AJ, if you'll allow me, I'll tell you my experience and my hangups with pot.
I want to say one thing in that time period.
Please.
You don't know you need cannabis until you need cannabis.
Okay.
Please go on.
Gotcha. So as a cop and just as a guy with friends that are like in their 40s or older that smoke a lot of pot, the thing that like just gives me the ick about pot is like, one thing is a lot of people like wake and bake. Mm-hmm. And then depending on what kind of person you are, because when I was in college, I tried pot and I wasn't a pot guy, like, or obviously you don't know what you're doing. You just take what's given to you.
Right.
And like anxiety, almost near like hallucinations. I was like, I'm a beer guy. I'm a lifer for beer. Anyways. But I have friends that like, they have a high tolerance. So they just like, you can't even tell they've been doing it so long, but they wake up in the morning, they get high and they drive their car. They get all day long. They're high and they smell like old pot. And it's just like, I don't know. I don't like it. It's like, dude, I don't like drink beer all day long, but that's one thing. And the other thing is I am concerned about the studies they've done. Like I've read like loosely about like the youth, like in probably any chemical, like when you're developing, they're saying they're studying people now because pot's legal. So it's like, it's everywhere. The youth that when you get into smoking as a kid, it can screw up brain development and things like that, which I think is worrisome, which like any other thing, like alcohol or whatever, like I just think it's the pot thing's so wide open now where it's just like, there's a lot of people like, it's totally harmless. It's fine to do all the time. There's no like, I feel like there's no, like the governor is off. And like anytime my family and I are in a bigger town or a city and we walk down the road, you smell pot. Like people are just smoking it out and it smells like shit. And it's like, I got to tell my kids, like, is that a skunk? I'm like, no, those are people smoking pot. And then they want to know what pot is. And those are the things that bother me, but I'm not so short-sighted that I can't understand that. Like it clearly has some compounds in it that are beneficial. And just because they didn't benefit me doesn't mean that they can't help other people. And obviously you have a huge knowledge base on that. So school me up a little bit on it.
Well, thank you for having me on the show.
And we're gonna do the war stories as well, guys. Gotcha. Don't worry, we got the war stories coming.
I always want to start off real quick from a place of honesty. And your show is geared towards those that want to enter law enforcement. And I always want people to know that my time did not end the way I wanted it to end in law enforcement because of my own screw up that I took full responsibility for. So I always want to start from a place of honesty so that when your viewers listen, like, who the F is this guy? And this ties into the cannabis, which is that I didn't know that I was having mental health issues, which is why I enjoy being invited on to talk about the war stories, what affected me and all that.
Sure.
Okay. So now, which led me to my cannabis use. So the first part that you said is, the people that wake and bake and get up and just constantly smoke and this or that and all that. I am 100% in agreement that it, like any other drug, whether it's sugar or, alcohol, or whatever the case is, it's the relationship to the drug. It's not the drug, it's the relationship to the drug. Now, again, I am excluding like meth and heroin and fentanyl,
Right.
Obviously, fentanyl does have medicinal uses, and all that type of stuff. But,
I got it when they scoped my butt. They gave me some fentanyl. Felt great.
Ooh,
yeah.
Good times.
Went down like a
so
right out.
My personal take on everything that you said, and I'll break it down a little bit, is that I'm 100% for the responsible use by adults to consume. Now, when it comes to the medical, that would be for the recreational side. When it comes to the medicinal side of the house, there is so much information that we don't comprehend or understand about the cannabis plant because of the fact it is still a Schedule I narcotic. So 38 or 40 states. Right. I was just saying 38 or 40 states have some sort of a medical or recreational program.
Yep.
And what's happened is that you very much there's deadlock against each other right now for pro and against. I mean, you're talking about old school type prohibition mindset. Now, the problem with the medicinal side is because it's still a Schedule I, you in fact cannot study it because they're stating that it does not have any medicinal properties. So there is any requests to study it has to go through very, very rigorous process. And one of the biggest problems was that the study they were doing, the weed that they were using was terrible weed. It was grown out of a place in Mississippi. I think it was the University of Mississippi. Don't quote me. But they were getting this. This was the government pot, and it was terrible. So they weren't unlocking the full benefits. So moving into today's world of, lots of medicinal purposes, uses and all that, you're going to have 90% anecdotal stories. And this is where I come in and I have the conversations with the cannabis users and state, why are you using it? And what are you using it for? Now, if you just want to smoke it to get high, okay, well, your drug would be whatever the drug is. It wouldn't necessarily just be cannabis. You would be sniffing glue. You would be huffing paint.
Right.
You would be abusing alcohol, whatever the case is. That's just the addictive mindset. And again, an inappropriate relationship to the drug. And when you look at the medicinal side and you start hearing the stories about pain, okay, and everybody's like, oh, everybody has pain. They use that as an excuse. Well, you're right. I mean, I have herniated discs and a fused spine now. The chronic issue is the pain that causes. You know what I mean? I'm not going to use cannabis to cure my herniated discs. That's not a thing. But it's the long-term usage of it that is significantly safer for the body. The number one thing that I will always say is that the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, has their street drugs of abuse, comes out, populates like every 2 years, maybe every 4 years. It's a refresher on all of the drugs across the country. Go to go to DEA.gov, go find drugs of abuse, their book, go click on marijuana, and it states directly on it, there has been no deaths from ingestion alone. I'm not talking getting in your car, doing so.
Although you may have a panic attack and think you'll be the first.
Right. So yeah, right. Like Joe Rogan has a great skit about that. Like, you're not going to die, but you think you're going to die.
Right.
Now, and again, all of that comes back down to the paranoia and all that. I'm not one of these people that thinks that everyone should use it and you can't be under the influence. And I always give the difference of, there's a difference between medicate and recreate.
Sure. I
can only talk about, my medication, and that's the fact of my back pain. And on a side note, I did not discover I had ADHD until I was 35 years old. And then I started out of law enforcement, and I was using cannabis, and all of a sudden I was like, holy crap, I can think. I can focus on things and have in-depth conversations and all that type of stuff. So it's about getting to the bottom of what is actually in the plant, because they've already identified 400 components. Another science side note, in the late 80s or early 90s, the federal government funded a study to show the harmful impacts of the cannabis plant. They discovered accidentally the endocannabinoid system.
That's what I read about, I think, yeah.
Yes, we discovered the fact that the human body has adapters, that the runner's high has now been discovered to be the same, on a molecular level, whatever, as THC. So they used to think it was, what would they call it? Endorphins or whatever the case was. But no, it's your body releasing it. So, and our bodies just have a natural, the lock and key type system, with synapses and all that. But it's been discovered to help with so many different things. And it hasn't been fully studied because, again, it's still Schedule 1. So I know that was a lot of rambling and a lot of talking, but again, when it comes, I'm all about the responsible usage and learning about the medicine and learning why somebody wants to use the medicine. I use it personally for my back pain, and then also for okay, yes, it makes you creative. It makes you happier. It makes you think good thoughts, and it makes you, look at things a bit differently, which was the unintended consequences in a positive way for me.
Interesting.
So if I can side note from that just real quick, and I won't go down the war story path, I'll do that, but cannabis helped me get through the situation that was post-traumatic stress in my brain. And we'll talk about that. But it was cannabis, and it was at one particular moment in my life where I was consuming cannabis and had a mental breakthrough. And it was like, holy shit, there's something really to this. And that's when I chose the path to go down, really embracing it as a medicine, and started learning about it and getting into the cannabis world. So more and more and more. So, which again, I want to say thank you for being a police podcast and allowing me to come on and talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm interested.
So many people don't, they're like, the same rule should apply as alcohol, not 8 hours before work. I'm just my little side tangent here. And being a consumer of cannabis now on a regular basis, I just can't figure out why we're demonizing it. I can't figure it out.
I think there's a big frustration with cops that I see, where they've given us, at least in Massachusetts, they've given us no tools to enforce it. So, I mean, catching somebody with pot has been a joke for the last 20 years in Massachusetts. Right. It's been like, whatever. Like, if the person's halfway polite, you might just take their weed. That's when it was illegal, You write somebody, you arrest somebody for like a dime bag. You're kind of like, not only the other cops, but the clerk magistrate's kind of like, okay, hard ass, But now it's like, there is such powerful weed now, and we don't have. Even in Massachusetts recently, they've started making the DRE cops less and less legit in court. Now they kind of want a doctor to testify.
Right. Understood.
For an OUI drugs case. No. So because Mass is very, you could look at it either way, but they're very into, it's a very low conviction rate state, that just the way it is. So so you have somebody who's all banged up. They can even tell you I smoked 3 giant bowls with my buddy. I'm so baked right now. And they were weaving down the road, or they're just not paying attention, and you pull them over and you cuff them up. You do some little minor things you can do, but there's no chemical test we can do. There's really no, no real good evidence solid certified evidence you can get on them. So a lot of cops don't try.
Right.
They're because there are people who get high and they And it's usually they get high and then they have like 2 beers or something. And then they are like their motor skills, they're wildly, their operation's inhibited. Like they shouldn't be driving. But for us on the road, it's like, what am I going to do? I'm going to do this thing. Then I'll go to court, get egg on my face, and then they'll kick it out. I think that's a frustration cops face.
And the thing that you said is that the word in, I'm not going to get like, there's a big fight right now with the word intoxicant and all that type of stuff. We know what we're talking about. If somebody's under the influence of something, the fine motor skills and all of the stuff that happens with alcohol is just not the same as cannabis. You know what I mean? Like your speech is not slurred. The joke is that, somebody's driving while high because they're doing 4 miles an hour down the freeway. Right. There is a delay. Like I will never, ever say that like, there's not some sort of a delay. And I believe that people who smoke too much or consume too much of anything that in fact affects them shouldn't be driving. And it's one of these things where I don't believe in a per se limit. So I do not, I'm sorry. Yeah. In a per se limit because of the fact of, as a daily cannabis consumer,
like 0.08 would be the per se limit
right.
in mass. Just so people know.
Thank you for clarifying that. Yes, I'm sorry. In regards to like alcohol, yeah, if you are above a 0.08 blood alcohol concentration, you are presumed under the influence of alcohol.
Right.
Where cannabis doesn't have that because when they take the blood, 12 nanograms per milliliter. Well, what does that mean? 100 milligrams per milliliter. Well, what does that mean? And so it's very much a case by case. And again, I don't agree with per se limits, and I'm unaware of who does have one, but as daily medicinal cannabis patients who consume to live a better life, and that's the other part too, like the quality of life of cannabis users who are in chronic whatever is significantly higher than if they were using opioids. That study's been done
that's a great point.
times.
I mean, we need to get away from those things, and if this can fill that gap, then how can you talk against it?
Well, and so it's one of these things where it's like, we don't know what impairment actually is at any certain level in cannabis. And I agree, man, law enforcement needs tools. I'm standing on the mountain saying, let's do some green labs. Let's draw some blood. Let's get some good, accurate tools. But again, your consumption is going to be different. Here's the biggest, sorry for my rant.
No,
alcohol
that's why you're here,
is
brother.
a poison, right? Alcohol is a poison. It attacks your brain. It affects everybody pretty much the same because it's poisoning you. When a person consumes cannabis, it doesn't matter whether it's, oils under the tongue or if they're smoking it or if they're vaping it or whatever the case is, ingesting it into their body. This is where certain, strains do certain things, is that what your endocannabinoid system may be lacking, mine may be full of. So when I smoke this strain, it has these components in it. My body's going to attach to these, but not those. So that's where it gets it sounds like super snotty and snooty and like, oh, you smoked the wrong strain, but it's actually true.
But it makes sense. I mean, hence we don't have a test.
Correct, because everybody's anatomy is different. That's exactly the point I'm trying to make, is that it's like it's a plant, for God's sakes. It's just a plant. So it grows and it makes what it makes. Yes, there's good geneticists that can make it grow more CBD or more this or more that. And I did want to also, you touched on the fact of there is super powerful weed out there. And I agree. I 100% agree with you. And I agree that I myself have had incidents where I have definitely consumed too much. And I've had those paranoid moments in my life. Now, being a little bit of a seasoned user on it, I know what to do. I know how to act. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, you're not going to die. We're good.
Right.
Let's just go. There's super simple things that people can do. And one of them is like, you can just take a big dropper of CBD. Just straight CBD will actually help bring you down almost immediately.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So a good CBD will help with that. Like my wife works in the in an emergency room, and she keeps telling the doctors, like when they come in for this, there is a bit of psychosis that happens and hallucinations that can happen. I'm like, just drop a couple 100 milliliters of CBD down their throat and they'll be good to go. They haven't reached that point yet where they can medically do that. So I don't want anybody to think that that's a practice that's happening, but it works.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, brother, because like I was talking about years ago in Mass, they legalized weed. And one of the funniest calls you would get would be like 2 60-year-olds, and they've not smoked weed since like the 70s. And they're like, let us get some weed. And they would, and back in the day, because there was no quality control and you were probably getting the
Right.
brown frown. You weren't getting high THC. They would share a joint. Well, the same couple shares a joint and they're out of their damn minds. And then they would, go in the ambulance and it's all like real basic anxiety stuff. Like I feel like my heart's racing or I feel like I can't breathe right and you know exactly what's going on. It's like, brother, you went too deep. Like you had too much pot. Like this isn't pot from 30, 40 years ago.
Right.
They're actually cultivating it now. But before we move on to the war stories, another thing I want to run by you. When I was in California, obviously there's dispensaries everywhere and you can get all kinds of stuff. So I had a wicked problem with my upper back to the point where I went to a masseuse and the masseuse was like, geez, like next time you get a massage, you should just get it done on your shoulder blade area. Cause there's like, you got some big problems in there. I had these knots and it would hurt up to my neck, like behind my ear.
Did you have chest pain?
No, I didn't have chest pain.
Okay.
But they said it was pretty common. They said that whole thing. And so they're like, try some CBD. So I start talking to pot people and at the same time I was reading the article my kid I went to high school with about him curing his stage 4 or putting it in remittance. And, so I was curious. I went to a dispensary and I'm talking to them and they're like, well, and at the time I was like, I just want CBD, like whatever is like, doesn't have THC. And they're like, well, you can try this, or this. But they said, the problem is you'll get 5% of the benefits. If you get something with a little THC in it, the way they work together on your endocrine system is the magic bullet. They said, you're going to spend $50 on the CBD tincture. And I'm telling you, spend the same amount of money on one with just some THC and those knots in your back will melt away. And I thought that was fascinating because you know how it is marketing. So it's like,
Sure.
They're like, you can have all the benefits. CBD will, you'll grow your hair back. Your pants will be tight. Your wang will get, whatever they're telling. But they're leaving out that part. They're leaving out the part where it's like, it's actually like a symbiotic relationship, those two chemicals. Yes. And I thought that was fascinating because I just saw so many ads on the internet about how CBD is going to solve all your problems. And it's all mail order stuff. Excuse me. It's not the stuff with THC. And that seems to be the magic key.
You still will get, real quick. There's isolate. Think of an isolate, a distillate or an isolate, it's just the CBD, just the THC. There's broad spectrum, which has some of the stuff. And then there's full spectrum. And I'm talking on CBD right now. Full spectrum CBD is going to be CBD that has up to the federally government allowable amount of 0.3% THC per volume per dry weight, or whatever the case is.
Okay.
So you're correct. So now again, the bigger the bottle, the more in it, 500 milligram bottle is going to have 0.3, could have up to 0.3% of the THC. And what you're talking about is called the entourage effect. And the entourage effect is you've spelled it out perfectly. I'm not even going to rehash that symbiotic relationship and it's also the other fact of there's so many other components in it other than just CBD and THC when you get full spectrum. So CBD,
full spectrum. Yep. They said that a lot.
Yes. CBD isolate is going to have just CBD. And I love just CBD. I love isolate. There's Rescue One CBD that I've been communicating with that they're firefighters. I can't remember where they're out of, maybe out of Florida. There's a lot of that stuff out of Florida, but yes, there's many different aspects to it. And again, it's a plant and there's so many different processes and all that type of stuff. So it's so in depth. I could talk about this stuff for hours because I love teaching the public. And I absolutely 100% believe that it has a place in law enforcement. At the end of the day, when you just got done pulling that dead kid out of the car and you need to actually relax and focus and de-stress and medicate, not numb yourself from the pain, right, and actually process emotions. Yeah. And that was the thing that, like I said, I know you want to move on to the other stuff too, but like the number one thing that cannabis does for me is it actually connected me to my emotions. It allowed me to process things that had happened from my time in law enforcement. My military service was like, I was locked in a skiff and didn't go anywhere, do anything fun. So, I didn't have any trauma there.
They broke all their promises to you.
Right. But my trauma came from my post-traumatic stress and all that stuff and whatever you want to call it, was all from law enforcement and then post law enforcement and then starting to consume and use cannabis. That's what really helped me. And that's what I really started to see the benefits. It started to understand like, oh, now I get why I was such an asshole. Now I understand why I was not good to my family because I wasn't processing, from the previous years worth of trauma. So that's, right. And I appreciate, and again, like I really do sincerely appreciate you allowing me to come on and talk about this aspect of it that nobody gets to talk about.
Oh, it's super interesting.
And again, like I want cops at the end, I want firefighters, I want, level 1 trauma nurses and doctors to go home at the end of the day and smoke a joint as opposed to slamming beers or, drinking a glass of whiskey.
So you might be a good guy because I was sitting around with cops the other day and, not necessarily against pot or anything, but they're like, we hear what other states are doing. They're like, oh, New Jersey, now cops can smoke pot. They've kind of are ignoring the federal whatever. And right. people have been ignoring the feds since they were established. So that's not that big a deal. But anyways, their employers are saying you're not going to be like fired for this.
ProForce Law Enforcement, the best damn cop shop in the nation, whether you're purchasing for an entire agency or you're an individual officer looking to buy firearms or duty gear, these guys are the best in the biz. ProForce has law enforcement exclusive pricing and is the place to be buying your guns and duty gear. They carry all the top industry brands, and the guys and gals that work there understand exactly what law enforcement officers need. Special discount link, tps.proforceonline.com. It's deeply discounted items just for the listeners of this show, or you can go to proforceonline.com and shop the whole place. Place is unbelievable. You can also visit Prescott, Arizona in person or Brea, California in person to get hands-on with the gear. All the contact stuff is in the show notes. Thank you, ProForce.
As a guy that is in the know, what would you, if you're writing a policy, like there's an alcohol use policy, coming to work sober and all that, what would be the time frame you think you would nail down for pot use?
8 hours would be, I would just go exactly like alcohol. I would do exactly like alcohol. Oh, sure. And again, but now that again does come back down to the fact you got to know your body and all that stuff.
Well, yeah, because you can drink a case of beer and in 8 hours going to work be a 0.05 still.
Right. So yeah, no, I would just give it the simple, and again, where if you have someone such as, a professional who's using it for at the end of the day relaxation, yeah, you're not going to be hitting it hard and stuff like that. You're going to be mellowing out, chilling, watching a good movie. So yeah, I would give it just a standard 8 hour break in between last usage. In between last usage and then, just till your work.
Okay. Interesting. So, when I went to police academy years ago, there was this town that was in the academy, as a regional police academy, and they still had in their union contract that they could be a .02 while on duty because they wanted somebody at the union president or somebody all those years ago wanted to be able to go home for supper and have a beer with supper. And the kid's like, yeah, it's still in there. I'm like, wow, I've never even heard of that.
We won't talk about SWAT operations out in the desert. we won't talk about those days.
I'm sure. And they're probably a lot like the LAPD Vice guys who are 2 drink minimum guys. I mean, 2 drink maximum.
Yeah, minimum.
Yeah. 2 drink maximum. AJ, that was great stuff. Thank you for that. Can you take us way back to when you were a young trooper on the job, the first call you went to that gave you an adrenaline dump?
Yeah, I can do that. I was thinking about this, and it was my first 45 minutes on duty. So, do the academy, do the post academy, do all that good stuff, graduate on Friday, get to drive because we were state troopers, we got to take our patrol cars home. So I remember academy or everything graduation. And then, next Monday you start your new FTO. You got to go pick up your new FTO. So he only lived a few miles away from me. So drive from my car to his house. And I think I had met him like one time. Oh, real quick. My dad was on the department for 32 years. My brother was on the department for, I believe, 24 years. He just retired.
Legacy.
Yeah. So at the time, I have no more ties to my previous agency, so I can talk smack. But anyways, no, I'm just kidding. So I go and we're standing on the driveway. I meet him and shake his hand, and he's just kind of going over, okay, we're going to do this, and you want to make sure you have your spare key on you, and just blah 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 blah. Just kind of good, just walking me through the stuff.
Sure.
So and he goes, and of course my patrol car was an old POS. But it was my first baby. So he goes, all right. He says, I'll drive. I go, where's the first place we're going? He goes, QT. I said, all right. So we go to QT. Now, remember, we were troopers. So we started in our driveway. Our shift started in our driveway, ended in our driveway. We only went to the station for paperwork. We didn't have roll call. We didn't have anything like that. We go to QT. We get a coffee real quick. We're driving down the road, and all of a sudden an officer gets on the radio and says, hey, I'm on a stop eastbound 60 at wherever in East Mesa. And he goes, and I just had a motorcycle fly by me at like 140 miles an hour if anybody's east of me. And we were way far east. We're like, well, shit, let's go look. So we're up on top of we're in East Mesa. So we're up on top of the Power Road off-ramp. And this bike comes a screaming by, and no exhaust on it. I remember it's like it was yesterday, just
so
screaming. Oh my God. And it was only about maybe a little further, but it was about a mile or so. So he sees us, and then he cuts over and he exits the freeway. He did not see us at that time. He cuts over. He stopped at the ramp. He stopped at the red light, and my FTO goes, he says, let's go try to stop him. And the pursuit policy back then was if they exit the freeway, you're done, all done. You're not going to chase a crotch rocket across the ground or, across the city for that. Well, he sees us coming up. He blows the left. He blows the red light. He makes a left. He makes another left. He gets back on the freeway going the other way. All right. So code 3, lights and sirens. We are now full blown. We are now calling pursuit. It's, I don't know, 8:00 in the morning. Phoenix metropolitan area rush hour traffic. We're calling pursuit. Everybody's getting into it. And there's a bunch of motor officers that are like pulling traffic along the same stretch of freeway because it's rush hour traffic. So it's like, holy shit. I'm like 45 minutes into my first on duty anything. Yeah. And we're now doing 110 miles an hour in pursuit down the freeway, and
big straight roads out there, I bet.
Oh my God. The freeways, especially. Yes. Yeah. And so we're just screaming. And then now a motor officer is up on top of one particular overpass. The suspect goes to flee and exits that overpass, almost hits that officer. Officer dumps his bike to not get hit. Boom. We have aggravated assault on a police officer. So now, nice. I mean, come on now, you know how that goes.
Yeah.
So the chase is now on. So now we're calling city units. We're calling the city of Mesa. We're trying to get their air unit up, and end up, the motorcyclist is coming down either Country Club or Alma School in Mesa, I forget, on the northern part. And another officer was coming the other way. Again, we're kind of closing in and circling the area and all that type of stuff, looking for him and all that.
Yep.
And an officer catches him at 120 miles an hour on radar in a school zone where a lady was pushing a stroller through the school.
Gosh.
Through it. Right. Exactly. So, I mean, so now we're like, okay, we're done. So we ended up, at however much time had passed, we end up catching the dude. He dumps his bike, and now he's running on a wall of a tall apartment complex, and then slips and falls off the wall. We go grab him and all that stuff and tackle him and all that. And there was two things that were going through my mind. What do I do? Like, I got out of the car. Yeah. I remember I got to keep my hands free because I got to grab stuff. So I got my hands free, and I go running up, and we're like, doing the polyester pileup on the guy. But the number one thing that I was thinking in my mind was, I hope nobody, because again, I'm a fresh graduate, academy graduate. I'm just sitting there thinking, oh my God, like we got like 12 officers here. The sergeant is screaming, pardon, can I cuss on your podcast?
Yeah,
you cool with that? The sergeant screams, we're going to fucking bury you. You tried to kill my fucking officer. So we get him up and scoop him up and drag him off in handcuffs. And I'm still standing there. And again, I'm the rookie. So, they all look at me and they go, all right, Rook, there you go. Here's your first case. And I was like, holy shit. Like, is this like every day? They're like, not really, like, but this is pretty cool, for your first time. So that was my introduction. Was my first 45 minutes on duty was 110 mile an hour pursuit down through the city of through East Mesa, and chasing this dude on a motorcycle. And I felt so, at the end of the day, after we arrested the kid and, processed him and all that and booked him into the Maricopa County Jail, he was late to work.
Wow.
That was it.
No warrant, nothing like that.
Nope. He was late to work. His boss was going to fire him if he was late to work again. And instead of just doing the right thing and again, we probably would not have arrested him if he just would have pulled over,
Yeah.
Big ass ticket and said on your way. But yeah, one of those stupid mistakes you make in life.
Man, those bikes are scary. We just had a crash in the town just north of me. Kid broke a pole on a motorcycle. And it was like some of his limbs came off.
Yeah.
Like just because you're going so fast, you're just like a rotisserie chicken. I mean,
I used to ride, Yeah, I used to do CCS league racing, and I back in my late teens, early 20s, and I used to have a sport bike. Left for the military and then came back. And then when I came back and was a trooper, there was 2 or 3 accidents that I responded to where the rider did everything right. Unfortunately, had all the appropriate gear on and still ended up dying. One became a neck down. What is that? Quadriplegic. And then the 2 others died. And I sold my bike. I haven't ridden since. I'm like, I'm good. No thanks.
Yeah, they are enticing. Like I got a couple buddies who've been riders for years, and I take their bike for a ride around the neighborhood. And I'm like, man, it is so fun. But when you get out there with the cars, and because they look at you, and I do it myself, you go to pull out, you look real quick. It's small. So your brain registers bicycle almost. Like you don't realize it's going 50 miles an hour like a car. You look at it and go, oh, I can pull out. And that's like one of the big accidents, people just pulling in front of bikes. And
I went through, have you ever heard of Force Science?
Yes.
I went through their thing years ago when I was still in a detective, and it really taught me a few things. Like, again, just like the inattentional blindness. We're looking for cars. So when you look for car, your brain just doesn't register motorcycles. So you're like, man, It's not there. And your brain just fills in the holes.
Yep.
So,
yep. It's terrible. AJ, can you tell us like a very strange or bizarre thing you dealt with?
I think everything was bizarre.
It's Arizona, baby.
It is a little bit wild. Bizarre as in paranormal, or just in general in law enforcement?
Yeah, I mean, anything you got, throw it at me. Paramoral. I mean, I thought you were either going to say something to do with meth, or that's usually like the Southwest stories.
Dude. Oh, I mean, just the meth stories, spice. That shit was terrible. That was the worst. Like fights
truck stop
that
stuff?
I got into. Yeah. Back in the day, it was what the hell was it called? Whatever that stuff was called that they could purchase legally, and it was just bath salts too at the smoke shops and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, they changed like one molecule in spice, so it's like, it's unregulated.
Yes, the designer drugs.
Yep.
Let me come back to that question. Let me think about that a little bit on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you tell us about your most intense or terrifying call?
Yeah, I got a couple of them. One of the most intense ones was one that kind of shifted the focus in which I looked at policing. I was, for lack of a better terms, I apologize for the old term, I was a gear queer. So I wanted to know how everything worked. I wanted to know how my radios worked. You know that guy.
Yeah.
And I didn't necessarily have all the cool stuff. I wasn't buying all of it, but like I could tell you what frequencies our radios use and this or that, blah, blah, blah. So I'm looking at my buddy's patrol car one day. I'm like, what is that radio? He goes, he says, I'm on the crisis negotiation team with SWAT now. He says, so we get to respond all over. I was like, that's kind of cool. Moving forward to like an hour later that night, next thing you know, there's a guy standing on top of a wall that wants to jump. He ends up wanting to only talk to this one particular City of Scottsdale police officer, and we're shutting down the freeway and all that. It shows up, everything's fine, gets the guy down. But that moment kind of like that it's leading somewhere. I was like, well, what do you guys do? Like, what is hostage negotiation or crisis negotiation? And then they told me, okay, so I choose to do this. I think it's really, really neat. It is a SWAT position. You're part of the SWAT team. So I go through all of the training. I do all of the things. I'm now a crisis negotiator. So one night, 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, there's an accident on the freeway in Mesa, probably like Val Vista or so. And, there's a couple of my other squad mates there. And then my second FTO, also, I worked on his same squad. Fantastic dude, older guy, just calmer, let's not run down and get one. Let's walk down and get them all type guy.
Voice of reason.
Yes. So we're late at night, and all of a sudden, when I would switch and become a negotiator, they would switch your call sign. I was, Edward 619 on nights. And then when I was in negotiation, I was negotiations 212. So I think it was 212. Anyways, well, I'm on patrol, but all of a sudden dispatch calls my negotiations call sign. And I'm like, oh no.
Got one.
And I go, right? I go ahead. And she goes, please check your MDC. There's a situation. So again, this is Arizona at night, 10 plus years ago. So there's very, very few police officers on. The city of Globe was dealing with a suspect in a vehicle who's holding a gun to his head and threatening to kill himself. They've been trying to break through to this guy for a little while. So they need a crisis negotiator immediately. I'm it. Nobody across the state has this certification or anything. So I said, it's that Superman moment. I'm taking off my patrol uniform and I'm switching into my negotiations, and I'll be negotiations 212. I'm en route. So I'm hauling ass to Globe, which is about, yeah, exactly. You don't have to thank me. So I'm running code 3 to Globe, which is a city about 65, 70 miles east of the valley. I'm texting, I'm MDCing my buddy who I spoke about, the older dude. I spoke about him, and he's a Christian, and I'm a Christian as well. And I was like, hey man, I said, like, dude, like, holy crap, this is real. He goes, remember your training, just breathe, everything will be okay. So I get there, and it's a Motel 6 that's at the end of Globe. I pull into the parking lot, and there is a older, dark colored SUV, like an old Bronco or an old Blazer or something like that, backed in up against what would be like the motel, so like the bumper is kind of like close to the building.
Yep.
And there's 3 or 4 city of Globe. And again, Globe is a very small town. So maybe 15 to 20 officers. I might be off on that number, but it's a small little place, small little town, little mining town. And he's standing there. He's just got that gun to his head. And all of the officers, they've all got their rifles out, and they've all got their lights on, and they've all got the windows, and it's a typical police scene. Okay.
Yep.
No big deal. So I come on scene, I talk to the ranking officer. He tells me what's going on. And I said, okay, first thing I need you to do, what intel do we have? And I'm working intel on the way there. And luckily, again, it's a very strange story. Basically what happened is this guy was just kind of down on his luck, and he called his buddy back in like Idaho that was like, things aren't going well. I'm just going to kill myself or whatever. So then that buddy called Arizona police, and they ended up tracking the guy down. So just kind of a guy just down on his luck his whole life, never really made it.
Gotcha.
So I get up on scene, and I go to the ranking officer. I said, okay, first things first, turn off your lights. What information do we have? Like, let's bring the situation down. So he had a cell phone. This is the most miraculous part of the story, is how long the goddamn battery in his cell phone lasted. Anyways, so then I get a phone call, or I get his phone number, and now I'm stupidly pretty much standing at the hood of the patrol cars that are at the front of him, and then his truck, and then the truck, and he's standing there holding the gun. I mean, all he had to do was that, and I was done.
Right.
So 7 hours and 45 minutes of negotiating. 7 hours and 45 minutes of negotiating. We finally get, and again, I finally had, other crisis negotiators that were showing up. My secondary ended up showing up. My captain ended up showing up. So, I'm getting support services and all that, and we're getting stuff there over time. But I was the whole time, and I'm like, this is the old flip phone days. So I had just a battery pack plugged in, and then my buddies handed me, my secondaries handed me another battery pack. And then also we ended up moving down the hill, got him to drop the gun, got him to come out of the truck. Nice. Okay. So where I'm going with the story is that there were a couple of things that I learned in negotiation school, which was, if you made a promise, you keep it, no matter what it is. And he was worried about a couple of stupid warrants he had out of Idaho and not having gas money. So I said 2 things. I said, look, man, I'll show you the fact that the warrant, I said, you're not going to be arrested. I said, we're going to go get you some help and some treatment. I'll show you that the warrants are non-extraditable. And I said, and we'll get you some gas money. Oh, no, he's worried about his truck too. I go, and we did speak to the owner of the Motel 6. He says, leave his truck here, man. We're fine. We're good. So I go to the hospital with him. My captain's with me. My secondary's with me. The chief of Globe PD is also there. And we're in the hospital, and the dude turns around and he looks at me and he goes, thank you for saving my life. And I was like, okay, you're welcome. And I turned around and then I actually ended up vomiting outside, like just from the rush of emotions and all that.
Yeah.
And that was the moment that I've got the cool run and gun stories. I've got the helicopters and chases and pursuits and all that stuff. I mean, I worked criminal interdiction in the state of Arizona. All I did was chase people, but those were the moments in my police career that like really, really set the tone of what I was trying to achieve. And what I was trying to do was to just help people. And, I don't want to like save their life, but that was the moment that was like very impactful to me.
Yeah. So surreal for someone to say that to you, like to verbalize it. Thank you for saving my life.
Yes.
You might say, I'm getting into this profession to save people, but you never think someone's going to be like, thank you. You did that today.
Yep. The most impactful moments I had for my career. Oh man, like I said, dude, I could sit here and tell you all the cool stories. I could tell you about when the bad guys called for help and out of the deserts and tried to ram us and all that good stuff. But the most impactful ones were the ones where I was actually in roles other than a police officer. I was working as an EMT. I mean, I was a police officer, but put on my EMT cap and then became an EMT, put on my crisis negotiator cap and was doing crisis negotiation. And those were the most impactful moments. And those one-on-one moments of like humanity were the things that impacted me the most.
Yeah, absolutely. Great story. I love that.
I have a strange story. It popped up into my head.
Yeah, let it rip.
Okay. So I'm on a traffic stop, westbound US 60 at approximately McClintock. Again, I worked nights for 7 years. I worked Graves for 7 years. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday nights. So it was a rocking good time. And I had the most amazing squad and the most amazing sergeant for the most part. I'm working a traffic stop. It's 2:00 in the morning, and you know the spidey sense. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, if you get into this profession or any sort of a first responder profession, you will understand what it is. And there's just something that happens in your brain where you're like, something is not right here, or something is off, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
I'm going through this. I go up to the car. It's a little old lady, whatever the case may be, zero threat. I get her on her way, but as you know, I'm doing the hyper ninja, like walking up to the car, like, whatever. And I'm still just like, am I going to be ambushed? Like something is just very, 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 very off. And I get through the traffic stop and I'm standing inside of my car. And again, like full blown, like hair standing up on the back of my head. And I just can't figure it out. And I turn around and I look, and there's a light pole, one of the big tall light poles on the side of a freeway.
Yep.
And there was the badge number of Officer Skip Fink, who was my dad's best friend growing up, who was hit and killed in that very spot.
Oh, weird.
It was very weird. And I knew Skip. And I looked at that. It was one of the stars. It was just a sticker star that one of the officers whoever it was, had gone by and slapped it on there at one point in time. And I just looked around and I said, "Hey, Skip." And the feeling immediately went away. And I was like, "All right, we're good."
Yeah.
Got back in my car, and it was like, it was just him saying hello, like a little pat on the back, like, "Hey man, it's been a while since I've seen you."
That's crazy. That's so funny. Yeah. Usually you have those feelings. There's like, it's not an old lady. It's like, gangbangers, or there's a gun or something like that. So in this case, you must have been like, "Oh, nothing is out of the ordinary with this car. So what the hell am I feeling this for?"
Oh, and this was during a period of time where the cartels were hitting hot and heavy. We knew that in the Phoenix metropolitan area, we knew that cartel members were just stopping on the side of the highway by the Arizona Mills Mall. There was this little cutout where you could walk right out of the freeway. They would stop. They dump their stuff out. They put the money in, whatever the case in, and they do a transaction right there on the freeway. So again, like we were hyper vigilant. Again, I worked, essentially a border area for years where the cartels, this was the cartel's playground, still is. So yeah, we were always very hyper vigilant to all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, man, especially when you see I'm sure you were privy to like what they do to their local cops across the border. You find them like two of them in a cruiser with like no heads, or their face is gone.
Let me tell you you know what? This is a better story, actually. Let me tell you this one real quick, and then we'll move on. I worked interdiction. I disrupted criminal cartels. I was out there on the highways in between Phoenix and Southern Arizona, the only one at night for several years in the Phoenix metropolitan area. There was the Casa Grande unit, but they stopped working at like midnight. They were also really, 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 really good. So they pop a load, go home. You know what I mean? They knew what they were doing. And I was budding and trying to get better at it. I'm hitting it hot and heavy. I'm disrupting the cartels. I'm getting human smuggling loads every night. I'm getting dope loads once a week. And so I'm getting a name made for myself. So in the interdiction world, one particular morning, it's about 5:00 in the morning. I'm westbound I-10 coming into Phoenix from what would be like the Tucson, Casa Grande area. So it's coming into Phoenix where, all the drugs come through. I'm on a traffic stop. I'm looking for a load. And I said, I'm just going to make this stop real quick and then go home. I make the stop. It's nothing. I'm writing a warning. I'm sending it on its way. I'm sitting there and I'm finishing up my notes. As I finish up my notes, there's a car that pulls in front of me, a little passenger car. Guy gets out and he's got his hands up like this, and he goes, he opens up his shirt like this, and I can see his badge and gun. He walks up, he goes, "Hey man, I'm Phoenix PD. I'm Phoenix PD." I said, "Okay, what's up, man?" And he goes, "Let me show you something." So he walks back to his car. He comes back to my car and slaps down photographs of me on traffic stops that were confiscated from drop houses in the Phoenix metropolitan area, because they knew that there was an officer that was working out there along I-10 alone at night. They didn't know my name, but they knew I was alone, and they knew where I worked, and they knew when I worked.
That doesn't feel good.
No, I'm like, okay, thank you. So I'm like, I got his contact information. I'm calling my sergeant. I'm like, hey, boss, they're like, let's talk. So everybody convened and like, okay, well, you're not allowed to work out there by yourself anymore.
Right.
So I ended up coming in for, well, the problem was I loved my old squad. Don't get me wrong, but they didn't like to do the interdiction. They liked to do the other stuff. So
motor vehicle and all that stuff.
Right. I was like, you bastards need to be out here chasing the bad guys. That was a hair raising moment though. That was
totally.
Yeah. That was like, holy shit.
I wouldn't sleep well from that, because it's like, what else do they know? Do they have my home address? Like, obviously, I'm a problem for them, you know?
They knew that there were 2 officers that worked the same area in the mornings, and there was one at night, and one of the officers in the morning was my brother.
Oh.
So, yeah. So it was a family affair.
Damn, man. That's spooky. No thanks.
And again, this kind of like alludes to the discussion of what's happening now about like law enforcement being allowed to shield their face. You know, there's a lot of that going on, because I've seen some videos now, man, of these protesters just taking a video of an officer's face, and then boom, they've got all their information, which is terrifying to me. But that was a side quest.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Absolutely. AJ, do you have a heartwarming call that you remember?
Oh yeah. I have lots of heartwarming calls. That was like, one of the things that really, when I saw an instance happen on the freeway where I could have saved somebody's life, but I didn't possess the skills to save that person's life, that's what led me down the path of becoming an EMT.
Okay.
And so the story that I have, it's a humbling story and it's a heartwarming story, because they ended up being able to get justice. Wrong way driver crashes right on the border of what my district was and the central district was. So that took 2 districts and brought them into one area. And so like just a little bit of confusion and that type of stuff. Well, that district, very serious wrong way driver in the Phoenix metropolitan area. And the car came on from like right in the heart of like I-10 and 7th Street. And if anybody from Phoenix knows the area, it's like the heart. Hits several vehicles, and they're shutting everything down. And they say the next officer on scene, from the next officer from Metro East, shut down this. I get on the radio, and again, trying to save the day. I go, is anybody, is fire on scene yet? They're like, no, they're not on scene yet. I said, I'm an EMT. I said, I'm going into the scene and I'm going to start triaging. So the captain goes, go ahead. You don't need to shut that down. Go ahead. So I get on scene, weave my way through the cars that are, the traffic that is now stopped on the freeway, pull up, and I grab my EMT bag, and I'm now running to the cars, and I'm like, okay. And there's, how like the accident has freshly happened, there's chaos, and people still walking everywhere. Nobody knows really what the hell's going on. There's maybe 1 or 2 other officers on scene. Phoenix PD is also now starting to come on to like, oh, this is not good. So I run over to one car, dead. Run over to this car, and then this person is not okay. So I end up going into the car, and I end up being behind her. And so I'm sitting down behind her, and I'm trying to feel for her pulse and all this. The car is so crushed and compressed. That's the only place I could get in.
Ooh, yeah.
So she's in agonal breathing. I can barely feel a pulse. So I end up getting what's called an OPA in, and so I've opened up her airway. So I'm now behind her, and I now have officers running over to me and screaming and yelling, going, "What do you need?" So I said, I need a triage list. I go tell me what that person is. Go tell me what this person is. Go tell me what that person is. And so I'm now doing CPR as best as I can from around the back of the car. And I'm like pumping on her like this from behind. I know. Sorry for that visual. So now again, everybody's coming up on scene, and it gets Phoenix in the summertime. It's 100 and some odd degrees out still at night. I'm drenched. I'm pouring sweat. Fire gets on scene. We're going to extricate her. So they end up throwing a blanket over both of us. I'm continuing CPR this entire time as best as I possibly can. And they're cutting the roof of the car off. So they cut, like I said, they just have a big ass fire blanket over both of us. So the saws are going, and the sparks are hitting and everything like that. Right.
You must have been sweating. Jeez.
Oh dude, it was a sauna. It was hotter than a sauna. So they cut the car away, they get her out, and then being an MT, I follow her into the ambulance and I tell them what I've done and everything like that. And they look at me and they're like, wow, awesome, cool. And so as I get out of the car, ultimately the girl ended up living. And what I didn't know was that she was the wrong way driver. So they were able to, luckily she was able to stand trial.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the heartwarming part to me, is that they were able to, I kept her ass alive long enough to go see prison. So
Right.
she didn't get to die there, but I'm walking out of the ambulance and I'm covered in sweat. I've used a bunch of my products, and my department did not have a program for EMTs. So I always had to go to the fire departments and beg for supplies.
Yeah, reload.
Right. So there you go. So I walk up to the Phoenix fire officer or the fire guys, and I'm getting stuff. And the Metro Central captain comes up and shakes my hand. He's like, "That was badass, dude." And like, I'm getting high, the cool stuff, man. I'm the cool guy. I'm the cool guy. Like, man, I'm 10 feet. I'm only 5'7". So, like I'm 8 feet tall and 400 pounds, and everybody's slapping me on the back and thinks it's the coolest thing ever. I go back to my patrol car and I'm grabbing a water bottle, put my bag back, and now I'm walking back in the scene. There's tape, there's police line tape, so the cars know not to go. And again, this is in front of a whole row of traffic. They're all standing there looking at this. Well, I'm walking back, and this truck driver in an 18-wheeler, he's looking down at me and he gives me a thumbs up. I give him the thumbs up. I look up at him. What I did not see was the piece of plastic about that big that was coated in oil that my right foot hit. And I hit that piece of oiled up piece of plastic and fell right on my back, splat on the freeway, right in front of everybody that I was just so freaking cool to. And I was like, that's the good Lord just letting me know that he's humbling me.
Brought you back down.
Yes. But the good news was that the girl survived, ended up hitting, going through trial, and ended up going to prison for the accident and the deaths that she caused. So I know that's not like the most heartwarming thing, but at the same time, it's like there was at least justice that was served.
No, it's a great story. It's a very nuanced
in that
story.
Capacity.
You had us cheering, and then we went, oh, wait. She was the bad guy.
Yeah, she was that, and that was the thing too. And I'll tell you what, there was definitely a moment in there where I was like, had I had known she was the wrong way, would I really paid that much attention to her?
Right. It was almost better you didn't know anything. Yeah,
it's better that I didn't know. It was better that I did not know.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that story. AJ, popular question on the show. Advice to people who are listening that are thinking about being cops, or maybe they're in backgrounds or they're about to do it. What would you tell them going in now?
You don't say one of the biggest thing, the biggest moment in my life that was the shooting that I investigated of a police officer. I wasn't involved in the shooting. I was one of the detectives that was co-case on it. So when I went to interview for the position of a special investigations unit detective, which was a homicide detective, the captain that was interviewing me talked about the fact that we're going to deal with dead cops. You're going to be investigating dead cops. Nobody knows how you're going to react when you see that uniform on the table.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what that meant until it bothered me so much. And where I'm going with that is that for those that are going into this career, there are so many amazing things about this job, and there's so many amazing things. And the reason why I'm not one of these mother effing people, like, how my time ended wasn't the best, but I'm not bitter about it. It led me to here to be able to mentor. There's so many amazing things that you're going to do. And there's so many opportunities, whether you're small town cop or big city cop. I'd actually say that the small town guys can actually do a little bit more in a different way, but you don't know how you're going to react until those situations happen.
Yeah.
And you don't know how that's going to affect you 6 months from the moment it happened, a year from the moment it happened. And as I said, I was a cop's cop. I spoke cop, walked cop, talked cop, you know what I mean? And did all that stuff.
Yep.
And I wasn't taking care of my mental health at all. I thought that by engrossing myself more into the work, that's what would help solve my mental health issues. But what I didn't know is that was partly what was destroying me. I'm never going to say, don't go into law enforcement. No, what I'm going to say is be a balanced human being. Understand that it is a calling. It is 100% a calling. And for those that love the job and know the job, know it's a calling. And you just don't know. You're going to hear the stories of people like, oh, you need to take care of yourself. You need to do this and do that. I don't have the words or capability to beat it into the newbies' heads that you have to take care of yourself mentally. You have to have that hobby, a hobby that is not talking about cop stuff,
Right.
a hobby with friends that are not cops. You can have your cop friends. You can absolutely have your cop friends, but do something that is not cop related, where you're not just talking about the dead bodies, where you're not just talking about,
Absolutely.
oh, you guys remember, that rollover, blah, 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 or whatever the case. Again, I was state trooper, so 80% of my stuff is vehicle related,
Right.
but you need to go in with eyes wide open and understand that it's going to mess you up mentally. You're going to see and deal with, the public doesn't realize in a town, how many suicides happen a day?
Right.
How many just dead bodies happen a day in just a city, just normal life, everyday life happens, and you're pulling out dead bodies, and you're dealing with dead babies, and you're dealing with the worst of society on a daily basis. But then on the opposite side, you're going to have an impact on somebody's life that you don't know that you had. And if it's a positive one, that's amazing. That's going to make that's going to make them want to become a police officer. That's going to make them want to, go into, civil service. It's going to make them want to do better for their community. And where I'm going with that is that you have to figure out the way to keep your mental health solid and not become that asshole and not become the cynic that when you see a person that matches the description of whatever, even when you're off duty, automatically, you're on guard and that type of stuff. You have to be able to have a balance and recognize the fact that it is a job and it will move on without you.
Right.
But while you're there, you need to do the best that you possibly can. And it is a sacrifice and it is a service.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Words of wisdom right there. I mean, I'm hopeful that there are more people out there talking about it now. So I feel like young cops getting in are consuming some of this stuff that we're putting out. And I think because when I became cop, there just wasn't even in my mind. It was more like, I'll probably see some stuff that's screwed up. Hopefully I don't freak out. You know what I mean? There was no like preventative stuff. It was just like, hopefully I don't have a meltdown, or whatever. But now people are seeing guys like you and other guests that come on, keep mentioning this kind of protective stuff. And I think I'm hopeful it helps,
Oh, and that was the one thing the ayahuasca thing.
Oh, right.
Talking about all of these different things that we're talking about and where I go with the mental health aspect is that I'll just give you the synopsis. I investigated a police shooting in Show Low of Officer Darren Reed. It was horrific. It messed me up mentally. There you go. There's the synopsis. But it was in those moments where when I was consuming cannabis that I ended up being able to disassociate from the thing and was able to walk through that scene and was able to really alleviate a lot of my trauma to the fact where I can even talk about it. And when I'm talking about mental health, I don't care what it is that you do for your mental health, as long as it's not destructive.
Right.
As long as, drinking is destructive. It absolutely is. And if I don't drink anymore. I don't drink anymore, not because I'm sober, because of any sort of a program or anything like that. I had a very piss poor relationship with it.
Yeah.
It cost me my job. It almost cost me my marriage. So I choose not to drink because it's that terrible. But there's a lot of other things that are happening regarding like ketamine therapy and ayahuasca and psilocybin and, cannabis and all that type of stuff. I'm so happy that you said that New Jersey is allowing them now, because I actually talked to a lieutenant that was instrumental years ago to get that involved. But that's where I'm going with the mental health aspect of is that it's the physical outlet regarding your physical exercise, the mental health aspect. And there's lots of promising futures in plant-based medicine. And it's just one of the avenues that I think officers should explore. And I think departments should start exploring. I just had a guest on my podcast, Matt Thomas. He was the number 2 of Pinal County.
Yeah. He came on here. Great guy.
He's an amazing guy. And he's the chief now of Florence PD. It's the town of Florence.
Oh, he's not chief deputy anymore?
He moved on to, he was just offered the position of chief of the town of Florence. So he took that.
Good for him.
So he was originally going to stay on with the transition to Ross Teeple to Pinal County. But this offer came along, so it worked out beneficial for everybody. But he spoke openly about the fact that he was an advocate for ketamine therapy for his department, which he led the way for there's Arizona Peace Officer Standard Training, which is the governing body. So he had to have the fight and lead the way on the ketamine therapy front. And he talks about the benefits of it. And again, there's so many things that, like, I don't think, ketamine is definitely a bit on the stronger side. So as is
Special
ayahuasca,
K, baby. Yeah.
Right. But again, therein lies the fact of the argument of it has a medicinal benefit.
Right.
Yeah. You can recreate with ketamine and, be, not able to function, or you can, let's heal through some trauma together type thing.
The thing about ayahuasca and I had, is it Mike Morgan who came? Morgan. He came and talked about, great guy. I can't remember his first name. But I think it was Mike Morgan. He came and talked about it, and it really helped him. And I kind of just sat there and listened and was thinking about it because I didn't really know anything about it.
Right.
The thing that really scares me about it is the spiritual aspect of ayahuasca. And the guy's talking about the Great Mother presenting herself to you. And I'm a Christian. So obviously
Sure.
to me, sounds demonic. It sounds like familiar spirits, unless you can do it and say, I know that wasn't real. That was, part of it's working on my brain. But there are people that do believe that there are these spirits that like communicate with you and you do it. That's what freaks me out about it mostly.
Brother, I'm a Christian. I have a cross tattooed on my arm. I am a God-fearing, believe in Jesus Christ Christian. And I can tell you now, I have never done ayahuasca. I have never done psilocybin. I have done an extraordinarily small microdose of psilocybin one time in my life, and that was it. I said I'm a cannabis user, but on a personal note, I'm not preaching anything. On a personal note, and seeing the healing that happens with these people, I personally believe that these plants were put on this earth for a reason by the good Lord Almighty to be used. We just need to learn how to use them properly. There are, in fact, many, many, many documented cases of exactly what you're saying, that some sort of thing tries to communicate with people when they're on ayahuasca or DMT or whatever the case may be. I've never had those experiences, so I don't know.
Right.
But the people that I know who have gone through these sorts of retreats or have gone through and used, a friend of mine uses psilocybin on a regular basis because he has such severe PTSD that it keeps him on the level. The people that I know that have done it are Christians, and it's healing them. So I hear you. I believe in the demonic forces just as much as I believe in the good forces as well. And I believe in the power of God, and I believe in the power of Jesus Christ. I don't think it comes from a place of malevolence. I think it comes from a place of benevolence. And I think it comes from, these were the things that were given to us to heal ourselves naturally. And
it could be. It still freaks me out though.
I get it. I see now. I had a ketamine therapy doctor on, and I said, I'm not ready for it. And then Matt Thomas goes, you're ready. But I'm not ready for ketamine because that actually kind of scares me.
Yeah.
And because it's a jump.
Right.
Even me as a daily cannabis user, it's still a jump for me to use, which is where I stand on the bridge between blowing your brains out and ketamine therapy is cannabis. That to me is the bridge of like, hey, let's work through some things, let's kind of like relax yourself a little bit.
Right.
Maybe you're not ready for an ayahuasca trip. Maybe you're not ready for a psilocybin, heroic dose where you go and meet God for a little bit. Right. So, but I do believe there is power in all of that stuff. And I know this sounds super woo, but I have just been exposed to too many people that have shared their stories with me personally, not on the podcast, but personally. And I've seen the changes in people, and I understand why they're using whatever the case is, and seeing them come through these transformations. And it's like, there's something very much there.
Yeah.
There's something very much there.
I totally hear you. And the university close to where I work is UMass, and they're studying psilocybin and how it microdosing can repair the pathways in the brain for like Alzheimer's or something. But it's like, it's not woo-woo science. It's like they're really studying it and figuring stuff out. So you can't really deny, the they wouldn't put all that money into studying it if there was going to be benefits at the end, you know?
Amen. And for anybody who's ever interested in that sort of research, Dr. Sue Sisley, Sisley, she's like this spearheading all that stuff. She's here in Arizona. I'm lucky to be friends with her, actually, just because of all the cannabis stuff that I do. But there's some serious research going into that type of stuff, and especially for first responders and military veterans.
Oh, that's great. Brother, tell us a little bit about the Blue to Green podcast. What can people expect?
So the Blue to Green podcast is exactly what we're sitting here doing right now. It's talking about law enforcement stuff. When I started this podcast, I said, I want to bridge the gap between the cannabis community and the law enforcement community. I want to show the human side of law enforcement to the cannabis side and the human side of cannabis to the law enforcement side, and to talk about and to show the fact that, like, hey, you can medicate and lead responsible lives and still support law enforcement and all of those sorts of things and lead a productive life with a natural plant-based medicine that's not going to make you jump off a building, you know? So again, there's medical sides, and we could talk about all the other stuff, you know, at a later time. But yeah, it's about having conversations with anybody that will allow me to show what their departments are about, what they're doing, the community policing. I'm having a hard time getting into city cops. They don't like those little cannabis leaves on the side of my logo.
Gotcha.
But that's why, again, like, I'm so freaking thankful and grateful to the Pinal County Sheriff's Office, man. They have let me in. But it's about talking and just having open conversation and dialogue. You know, it's about them seeing and hearing my journey and showing them that we're not all just, you know, pot smoking hippies that don't lead productive lives, but it's about healing and growing together and bringing understanding. And on the cannabis side of the house, showing the law enforcement, you know, why they're using it. And on the law enforcement side, showing the cannabis users, like, you know, this is why they do what they do. And this is why we should support them. Because when some dude jumps in my backyard with a gun, you know, I want the biggest, baddest, meanest cops to come and take care of that problem for me.
Right.
So
that's why I pay my taxes.
Yes. But no, it's about just trying to bring everybody together and just have open dialogue and conversation, and also to understand the different laws. So
awesome. Yeah. I'll put the link in the show notes so people can find you. It's available on, I'm sorry, man. I'm like losing.
You're good. You're good.
It's available on all major platforms. I will link it in the show notes, and I'll link whatever else you like. AJ, it was an honor to have you on, man. Great conversation. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I sincerely appreciate it. And I really do. Again, I like to talk cannabis, and I don't shut up. So thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, brother. I got to go and do the outro. Can you hang on like 2 minutes?
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. Excuse me. The great AJ Jacobs. Super fun conversation. I learned a lot. Guys, this is a part of the show when I read the Patreon sergeants and above for a shout out, but I'm quickly losing my ability to talk. So I'm not going to play. Maybe I'll play the music like really low, and I'm just going to do straight up the names. Usually I get creative, but I can't do that. I'm talking about Andy Biggs, Joey Langley, Kyle Roberts, Michael Roach, Tom Connell, Adam McMahon, Adam Mihal, Brad Thompson, Brett Lee, Dan Carlson from Burley Boards, Sherry Finch, Clark Leckhoff, Dave Ellman, Dennis Kiraskio, Doug and Kelly Newman, Dylan Mosher, Elliot Sykes, Gabriel Decknop, Gary Steiner, George Kariotis, Greg Gadboy, Jackson Dalton, Jason Labrie, Jason Lau, John Jordan, John Shoemaker, John and Aaron Kate, Lauren Stimson, Lane Campbell, Lisa Gano, Marcus Johansson, Motor Cop Chronicles, that's Iceman, check out his podcast, Nancy Hammond, Paul Maloney, Raymond Arsenault, Richard Tolles, Sasha McNabb, Sam Conway, Scott Young, Sean Clifford, Seth Wright, Sheriff Ronald Long, Tammy Walsh, Tony Fahey, Zachary Pleat, George Tessier. I know that was really weird because usually I'd do a booming voice with everybody and then give you a nickname, but I couldn't do it, guys. I will do it next time, I promise you. Thank you for checking out the show. I love you, and I'll see you next week.